Why, hello there. It's me, Jeremy, your favorite bald dude telling you about Standard and Strange, a store and a brand with simple rules. Sell clothes they themselves would wear, manufacture it ethically, and build it to last. From boots made in Oregon to loop wheel garments made in Japan, find all the best clothes for your wardrobe at Standard and Strange. StandardandStrange.com. It's Blamo. I'm Jeremy Kirkland. We're all here. I'm here. I mean, I'm back from Toronto, where it was cold, it was rainy, but the food. Oh God, the food. Can I just say how much I love going out to dinner right now? I mean, I don't know if it's like kind of post-pandemic sort of thing, or I mean, it doesn't sound like it's a big deal, but because I do it so little now, when I do, I want to go big and I want to enjoy it. Like I want like dinner, you know? Like I don't want to bite. I don't want to quick something. I don't want to like sit and stand and munch on a snack. Like I want a dinner. Like let's sit down for 3 hours and enjoy ourselves. Seriously, I'm trying to pivot my whole dinner mentality, because at home it's you eat for 15 minutes and then you take turns holding a baby. But outside, oh man, it's sweet. So yes, I was in Toronto. I went to Prime Seafood Palace, friend of the pod, Maddie Matheson's new spot. It was heaven. Toronto is like a clean New York. You're right. So many people DM me when I was there, and it's like, hey, Toronto, it's clean New York. You're all right. You're right. It is. Thank you for the tips. And yes, I don't know what camp you're in, but Tim Hortons coffee is also dope. Okay, enough about T-Town. This week, my guest, it's Angelo Urrutia, founder and creative director of Forest Designs. Look, he's been on the pod before, right as he was about to debut his brand in March 2020. Not sure if you remember that time, but things got a bit nuts, and so did Angelo. But I said this on the Patreon episode last week. I believe he is the best designer out there right now, running the best brand in the world. Honestly, everything about 4S is rewarding. The garments are absurdly over-engineered. There's convictions to what he makes, and if you don't want to dig deeper, you don't have to. You can find his clothes, buy it, enjoy it for what it is, and that's it. It's beautiful. You can have a deep relationship with it or just have it. I love it. Angelo and I discuss working through the pandemic, what he learned to engineer garments, how he's handled all the attention he's received, finding himself through his brand, and what's next for Forest Designs. Here we go. Thanks for coming in.
No, thank you.
Fun fact, obviously you came on this show years ago, right as you were about to launch.
Right before the pandemic, I think.
Right before the pandemic.
Right.
And then what happened?
Fun stuff.
Yeah.
No, it was tricky. I was early enough, and I was able to get into like the mills and the factories just before like the door closed. So I was able to produce everything. I mean, it wasn't as timely as I would have wanted, but within the reason of normal deliveries.
Yeah, and you also were traveling during like the peak pandemic, you know, taking COVID tests, coming in and out of countries,
right,
making clothes, doing all that. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
So basically, like my original business plan was for my team to come stateside, because after working the way I worked, I wanted to have stability to work on myself, you know, my health and my mind, I guess. And unfortunately, because of that, I mean, Italian nationals haven't been able to travel. They started traveling last November.
Okay.
So it meant I had to go there.
Right.
Nonstop.
Yeah.
But I was able to get a special kind of permission of sorts to travel in. And I remember the first flight was the most surreal thing ever. It was like a sci-fi movie. It was basically to Rome, only to Rome. And you had to take a PCR, then you had to take a rapid before you boarded. And then as soon as you got off, nothing on the plane, like everything had to be sealed. You know, everyone was like KN95 masked up. It was just bizarre. You know, it's just a bizarre thing. Like, you know, the people on the plane didn't speak to you at all, almost. You know,
yeah.
It was like, and it's a long flight, you know. So, but when you land, you have to go into like this kind of barricaded section, and it's like curtained up, and it's like 3 different types of military, I guess. So it's like probably like the national army of sorts.
Yeah.
And then probably local police, and then like their version of an MTA, I guess.
Sure.
And they're like all like with like machine guns, so it's like you're like, huh? And then you're supposed to be far apart, and it's like my section was just like me and a bunch of nuns, right?
Okay.
And then it's like, so it's very intense, right? And then you get to a place and it's just like these like young men and women in like really neat aprons coming up to you and like, oh, Americano, espresso. And then, everybody's getting tested again, even before passport control. So it just feels like wild.
Yeah. You're like, I'm here to make clothes.
Exactly. I'm like, I'm not saving lives or here for Vatican purpose or something intense like that. And so, yeah, but then you do that and it's you wait some time and then you go to passport control. They don't even ask you anything and you're free to go. You could do whatever you want anywhere in Italy. And then I have to take like that first time, I don't remember if I took a train or a flight. I don't remember.
Because you were like...
Because I'm in Bologna. I'm based in Bologna as like my hub. Yeah. And I have like a studio and my office and warehouse there.
Right.
And that's because like I manufacture and develop as far north as... Venice. Mm-hmm. And now I started doing, before it was just about Florence, and now I go down to Puglia.
Okay. Where's that?
It's in the very south of Italy. It's like the heel.
Okay. Right,
where like the last James Bond movie was the first like 20 minutes?
Yeah.
That's Puglia.
Okay.
It's beautiful. You should go. It's amazing.
Add it to the list.
And the food is, let me know. I'll give you spots. Puglia is amazing. I can't wait to take my family there. But it's, so anyway, Bologna is very central for that. And, it just works really well to kind of move around a lot.
Yeah. And since then, I mean, and how many, sorry, to zoom out for 1 second.
Yeah.
How many times did you go to Italy a year? Because I think a lot of people think that like designing it, especially now where some people will view a designer as some sort of like paint by numbers thing or some sort of I add this or I chose this fabric and then I got it made. But it's like you're designing textiles.
I'm designing textiles.
You're designing
shooting myself in the foot.
No, you're designing the clothing.
Yeah.
Then you're also handling the production for that. I mean, I know you have a team, but it's like
right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, as far as creatively, it's just me. And it's tricky, but for me, just like having, my experience with Nepenthes allowed me to kind of have this muscle that I never knew I had. That creative part of all of this is it's simpler for me than I think the next person. And it's not really related to kind of history. I started realizing that for me, it's just like, I think about more of like what it maybe the feeling of something is versus like the exact thing. So just my experiences, even before Nepenthes, being able to just run around New York City and kind of having so much access. I just think about like random things that kind of don't connect and try to connect the dots.
Right.
And I know that sounds, that's a lot for like just a very simple answer. But the idea mostly is that I understand how far I can push a mill or a factory, and I push as much as I can till I understand that it won't give anymore. Because my pursuit of all of this is to do something new. I don't even know sometimes what that new thing is, but I want it to be something I've not seen or something that is an answer to something that I've been questioning for a while. So going there and talking to these people, they were able to really, especially the mills, really early on get inspired by me questioning them. Like, I would say to them, why? And they would be like, what?
Yeah. Like, what do you mean you don't?
And then
I
would kind of say, I started in that instance kind of referencing things like the idea of Armani. Like when Armani was more American than he was really Italian, like the sportswear aspect of it. And I would say to them, like, the idea of it, not the actual thing. And they were like, oh. And it kind of allowed me to have a relationship with them.
Yeah, because I mean, you've done and have developed textiles of things that like almost are oxymorons, and that like the jacket you're wearing when we met up. What you said, it's like a waterproof leather.
Well, actually, yeah. So it's bonded with a very lightweight waterproof. Windproof scenario. So it's bonded, but it's not taped, so I can't say it's waterproof.
Okay, fair.
So basically, since it's backed, it's it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
And then they treat it. They have a treatment that doesn't really last very long. It's meant to last like about 5 years, but when you use it, it gets lower and lower. So it's got two different, like it's treated with the thing on top and then it has the backing. So I wanted to just make something like, I usually have this kind of Patagonia jacket that is like a very, very light shell that they don't even make anymore. That is taped up, waterproof, but I've broken the seal. It's very old, but they don't make it anymore. And I love it because you could just pack it in a bag. And I wanted to kind of think of the idea of just doing something that is with more craft, but you could kind of say luxury. That's a more simplistic way to say it, but something that just you don't want to get rid of. Like with a nylon jacket, I think sometimes you just want to be like, I'll get another one.
Right.
I think with a leather kind of raincoat, you wanna hold on to it.
Yeah, but leather and raincoat are almost
yeah.
So I mean, but I think that's the point. Like for me, because it's like the stuff that you made. Even the other night we were hanging out, you had the it was I won't try to put words in your mouth, but it's like the deerskin denim.
Right. So it's deerskin.
But they looks like jeans.
It looks like an aged denim. Yeah, I've been trying to do that for some time, and finally they got it right earlier this year, and basically it's printed in a very specific, special way that has to have the grain of denim. But basically, it's just like for me, that's like it's luxury for yourself. Like if I didn't tell you, you probably would not have picked up that it was that. But and when you touch it, when you feel it, it's like heaven.
Yeah.
It's like sexy. It's so many things. It's this idea of falling in love with clothing in a different way, right? Where it's not about the luxury that I try to make is not for like the ostentatiousness of like flash. And sometimes I make a little sparkly things, don't get me wrong, but it's more craft that you have to appreciate in person. It's like the human hand in a different way, more analog.
Yeah, and I think like I'm not taking credit for this quote, but someone had said like luxury is something that makes you comfortable when you have it and uncomfortable when you don't. And I think like there's this like new embodiment of luxury that you've created, and the word to just like saying luxury to describe what you're doing is almost trite because like
Thank you.
Well, no, I'm just saying like I think this stuff that you've made, and I say this as like a genuine curiosity, not like, ooh, let me set you up here. Like there's still head scratchers to me because it's stuff that's like, man, I want that. And I can see how that would fit in with stuff that I have. And then when you show me how it fits in with your wardrobe, like your lookbooks, similar to the stuff that, when you worked on when you were at Engineer Garments and Nepenthes, are just total head scratching, like beautiful like works of art. Like I mean it's so perplexing.
Well, I guess that's what I mean. I want to make something new, right? And
it's definitely new.
And I still, I still believe in servicing the customer. I still believe in the store. I still believe in humanity to a certain degree. I know that sounds really
heavy.
Yeah. No, but I feel like, it's like I try to make work where it reminds you of why you fell in love with something, with clothing, with an object, with with an iPhone.
Why did you fall in love with clothing?
It's very good question. I fell in love with clothing because it was a piece of armor for me as a kid. Growing up the way I grew up, you had to like out style the next person. So for me, at first,
you grew up here.
Yeah, in New York. I came here when I was 3, from El Salvador. When you're growing up, there's a point in time where people become bigger than you. People have more money than you. And so you have to figure out how you can still live in that ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Right. And at first it's like a natural instinct just to like survive. But then you kind of have fun with it. Right. And I didn't realize all of this till I was much, much older. Like for me, I never really thought I would ever get into the clothing business at all. But I also loved product. Just like I said, iPhone before. Like when you were a kid and you had I remember I had a Voltron that was metal.
Hell yeah.
I don't even know if it's like the real thing or not.
Die-cast aluminum.
Yeah, exactly. And then you look at things now and it's just like, it's not the same. But there's certain things like you're like, it's like they feel so much more genuine and authentic.
Yeah.
And I've always been like very much drawn to that kind of product. It's not just clothing, but then I started finding it in product. Once I started being in the business, you just I was fortunate that I was able to live in a bubble and just really live my regular life, and it was work. And I always approached things that I worked for someone. So I didn't really come into it with an ego. It wasn't like,
Because you were more curious than like you were trying to accomplish something. Is that?
I was really inspired by Daiki a lot because me and him Daiki Suzuki of Engineered Garments. I was very inspired by him and by Todd Killian. He does the production there. Was a designer in his own right years earlier, but I was so inspired by them still wanting to make something beautiful. It wasn't, and me and Daiki in particular love a lot of the same things. We just love it in different ways, or respect. Maybe that's a better word for it. And so it was very inspiring to me to work for someone like him.
Mm-hmm.
And also, he was very kind in the sense of like also sharing so much and being very honest with me about things.
Yeah.
And so, the work was so much that it really didn't allow me to have a social life in the fashion world.
Right. And I think that nails it, because you're not a fashion industry sort of guy.
No.
But every person I know in the fashion industry, and thankfully I now know enough that they're like, yo, 4S, favorite brand. So like, here's the thing. Well, if you can't, like, why do you think that is? Because the product is super technical. I don't know anyone who truly understands the brand. And I think that the people they're confronted by the challenge of understanding it, that they fall in love with it.
Right.
And also the pieces alone, it's like, oh, of course, why didn't I think of that? What about like a waterproof leather jacket that's also kind of like a hoodie and a bomber? Because you pull all these references from things that are very overlooked.
Yeah, or maybe...
And I say this in all these in a loving, good way. Like, because when you talk about like you were in the bubble, but like you grew up in New York. So you saw an amalgamation of culture smashed together.
Right.
And then people trying to ascend a cultural ladder through their behavior and product. And so it's like the leather jacket in and of itself has been a status symbol for ages.
Right. Yeah, you would go to Orchard Street,
Bingo.
and things like that, 100%. And
embossed leather. Remember when that was popping with people with like eagles on there? Yeah.
No, 100%. Like, so I don't know. There's like being a kid in New York, you don't have a car. And so like your jacket is your car, right? And so there are times where when you lived in the way I grew up, it's just sort of like you want to have the best car that you could possibly get your hands on.
Sure.
Kind of by any means necessary. And so in that, I think about that from time to time, because obviously it's not the case now. A lot of people don't live in New York, and a lot of I don't know who my customer is exactly, but a lot of them do not live in New York.
Sure.
But I always think about it in that sense where it's like there's no real elevator pitch for the type of work I'm doing, but it's just like I try to take not only the European savoir-faire, but things like Ventile or things like the idea of against the weather, and try to Americanize it, try to just simplify it, and just try to take the stuffiness out of it, like take the preciousness out so you can live in it in a different way, not worry about, getting it damaged or dirty or something. Just really kind of be your authentic self and just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the Ventile stuff, and I remember when you were launching your collection early on, it was important for you to have the name of the fabric on the product that you were making.
Right.
And that is not a common thing amongst designers who make stuff, to say, this is the fabric. And you're giving a ton of credit to the fabric on there. Like, why do you feel that? Why did you feel you had to do that?
I think, a lot of times there's things that are just in it of itself just so genuine and authentic that you don't want to take away from that. And you could put the labels on the inside, or you can really
because it wasn't hidden. I mean, it's a whole sleeve.
Yeah. I think that's the way I Americanize it.
Okay.
And I think about I love to think about mid-tier American brands because they're so forgotten. It's just like they just get tossed. And I think about Chaps, and I think about Nautica, and I think about all those things that for me, sometimes I didn't necessarily live in it myself, but I had a respect for it.
Right.
And they felt so American to me. It felt very, and more so New York, right? And so for me to put Ventile on a sleeve was very New York, but it was like the Rolls Royce of doing it, right? As a fabric,
right?
And as much as like you can get better things that are more, better for inclement weather, but there's something about that kind of old idea of something like that, And so for me, it was very referencing very high-end stuff and kind of, I don't want to say low end in a disrespectful way, but low end too, to a certain degree. And
Right.
kind of mixing that together,
Yeah.
you know? And also there's a whole bunch of people that don't even know what Ventile is.
Yeah, I mean, I made me realize, like, oh, should we explain it? Because it's a waterproof cotton, correct?
Well, it's not, it is. Basically what it does is once it gets wet, it tightens up.
Right, okay.
Right? So it's, you know, usually it's a layer, right? And you have to have something else underneath. But, you know, it's this beautiful old idea before the advent of
Gore-Tex.
And exactly.
Yeah.
And so that to me is beautiful in itself. You know, it's like, because I come from a place that I was saying to you earlier, you know, I don't really have any kind of heritage or tradition because I'm a displaced person, right? I came here when I was 3 and I didn't have any money. So I really didn't belong anywhere. I grew up in a black neighborhood. I'm not black. So it's always trying to find where I could put myself
Yeah.
Right. But I like to take this idea of coming from a place that's real, but what's real to me, right? I don't have that heritage. I don't have that tradition. I don't have that upbringing that I was on a boat or something like that. Or, you know, I don't think there's anyone in my family that would know what Gore-Tex is, right? Let alone Ventile.
Right.
Right. So how do I pull together something that really is something new, but comes from tradition or heritage? But, you know, it's like, how do you define those two things? Depends on whose heritage, whose tradition, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's something I think about, that it makes me wonder, like, have you felt an additional weight to communicate on the behalf of others who have come to this country displaced?
Right, 100%. So for fall 22, I wanted to take this idea of doing, again, it's the idea. And I used the phrase town and country, just kind of thinking about like how, you know, you grew up with, like, especially New York, like really loving polo country and double RL, you know, Nautica, you know, stuff that you would see at Paragon, Patagonia, lots of stuff, right? And so like it wasn't made for us. It wasn't, by us, I mean, it wasn't made for me and my friends. We had to take it, right? It wasn't made for anyone but for the country club, right? Or for the idea of like summering or...
AKA like people of a higher economic
Exactly. You
status.
know, going to the Hamptons, going upstate, et cetera, et cetera. And so I wanted, and I love those things. But then I was like, I can't really take any ownership of any of that. So how do I do it if I love it, right? So then I tried to make it for myself and for my friends. And I thought about that for a while. And I thought about like the idea of just being outside, right? And just like wilderness and those ideas of hiking and just like, you know, being by a lake or something like that. And that wasn't my experience with it. And so I tried to get a little bit underneath all of that. And I started thinking about like my mom and her experience of coming to this, bringing me to this country, you know, going through illegally crossing the border, you know, and just like risking her life, my life, you know, and just, you know, she would tell me about being in, you know, the woods and then being in the desert and then being, you know, just like stashed in someone's house for a couple of days, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And so it's like, I thought about those things and I thought about like what it means for me to come here. And so like, I just put that all in a blender and I came up with this idea of using these symbols that you would see in the Mexican-US border, warning you of people crossing the border. And I thought those signs, I remember being a kid and seeing those signs when I used to go to LA in the summers because my mom couldn't take care of me. And I remember they used to take me to Mexico and I would see the signs of the family crossing the yellow. It's like a yellow rectangle. And I would tell my aunt, like, what is that? And then she'd be like, oh, it's like because people cross the border here. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. So sad. And then I would see all the signs and I remember going back and forth because we would go down for like a weekend or something like that, you know, randomly. And I would love the signs because it was like mountains and snakes and just random. And I always thought they were cool as symbols. But then I also know the backstory of all of that. And
when did you really learn the backstory of that? Like,
I would ask. I think. I would just. I've always just been curious, right? I always wanted to understand things. Yeah. To really, again, coming to here to New York and just being always defensive with your clothes. You always want to know. Right. Right. But that kind of took over part of like everything for me. You always want to question like why and this and that. And so I would ask and my aunt would tell me. And when it came to this collection, I wanted to do this kind of idea of Patagonia or fleece and all these other things. But how do I do that, right? Without referencing the experience in New York of America, but also putting in the real DNA of my brand, not into the brand, but into the product.
It's that time again. The time for the old Jer Bears picks from Standard and Strange. You know what I'm talking about. They're one of my favorite clothing stores on earth. With locations in Oakland, Santa Fe, and New York City, they have everything from incredible leather jackets and boots to the highest quality Japanese denim. Look, it's getting a little warm, and I'm loving their new gear from Orslo. But by the way, before I start going crazy, here's a little tip, folks. If you don't have a pair of fatigue pants in your wardrobe, you're just missing out. And pair it with the Western shirt from Standard & Strange, and you're going to unite the world. Okay? I'm serious, they're great. And look, if you're still thinking, just head over to standardandstrange.com and see why they're one of my favorite shops. I mean, what other retail store donates 2% of their revenue, not profits, to giving back? I love these folks, and so should you. So visit standardandstrange.com to learn more. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for their mailing list so you never miss the latest dope gear they have at standardandstrange.com. That's standardandstrange.com. So maybe you're hearing this and you're only beginning your journey into watches. You just want to get started. Do you want the Bing Bong Ding Dong 49? Or do you want the Miter Meter Madness 5204? Well, hopefully you answered no to both of those because they don't exist yet. And as we're hearing, watches are confusing and intimidating at times, but they don't need to be. Start your journey at topperjewelers.com, a family-owned and operated store in the heart of Silicon Valley. Topper has long been a supporter of the pod and also my friendly guide in my journey with watches. From getting my first Omega Speedmaster to my recent Hamilton Khaki Field, it's all from Topper Jewelers. Topper also has an incredible selection of pre-owned models, all backed by a 1-year Topper warranty, so you know what you're getting is real and right for you. So visit topperjewelers.com to learn more. That's topperjewelers.com. Yeah, that was something you mentioned earlier, which is different because I think a lot of people are like, oh, all of these things are small puzzle pieces that make up this overarching story of my brand and interpretation. And like you have that with individual.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I said, I probably said it way better before, but it's
fine.
like, I put the creativity that I put into the work is not in the brand, but in the product.
Yeah.
It's all in the product. And I think it resonates so much more and it really cultivates this new way of looking at clothing or feeling clothing or doing clothing. You know, I feel like there's not enough emotion or creativity in that way. Mm-hmm. It's all just like, if you're going to make something that is considered luxury, I feel like you really need to do your work. You really need to do something that...
Yeah, what is luxury now? I mean, I don't even know if you have...
I fight with that all the time. I fight with that. Luxury is a very tough thing to grapple, being who I am in particular. Like this summer, one of the dearest people for me that I work with, was showing me all this stuff. And then I said, we were talking about vicuña and...
which is the most precious fabric.
Exactly.
Natural fiber ever.
And he made some fleece to show me with it. He's like, oh, I had some. And he's like, he was like, I thought you would really love it.
Vicuña fleece?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I know. But then it's just like, when you touch it, it's just like your mind, everything stops.
Yeah.
So when you have luxury in that sense where everything stops,
okay,
I feel like that's what it should be. But in this day and age, people wear their money on their sleeve. So, it comes
literally.
Yeah, literally. So basically, it's turned into something that can feel ugly at times. But for me, luxury is that moment when you touch or you feel something or that moment of love, of joy.
Yeah.
That you're like, oh my God.
Well, and I think that's the thing too. And it kind of jump us back on the road here. Like you're making luxury, explaining or exploring your own heritage and in some ways people would say it's like the American dream, because if you look at, and I don't even know what the American dream is for some people, but I'm going to try to explain my definition so it doesn't get confused with others, is you came here and you had to figure out who you were. It sounds like you're still figuring out who you are because you're being forced to look at where you truly came from. And now you're exploring that and trying to reconcile what you had and what you didn't have, but still make art that can kind of help you digest that. But something that you had said before we started recording is that you're being viewed as this, El Salvadorian male who has, climbed this ladder as this very highly, highly respected designer. But it sounded like you were also wrestling with the fact that this
particular work that this season, this fall 22, I grappled with it because it's like I'm speaking to the effect of that experience, but I'm not speaking to them, right? Because it's the way the work is built, it's a particular price point, and it makes me feel really bad, to be really frank. I'll disclose this now. Whatever. But the embassy here from El Salvador wanted to give me an honor, and I said I don't think I can. I would
You said
want
you didn't
that.
think you deserved it.
Yeah, and I participated in this thing with them, and I want to continue to work with them. But I felt ashamed because I was like, I'm speaking for them, but I'm isolating them and taking them out of it totally by making it in a very particular context that is luxury. Right?
I think, but yeah, I mean, and obviously I have the privilege of being outside of all that, but what if it was also looked at as a way of inspiration? And because I think like that's the thing that really, it breaks my heart in ways where like you look at other designers, they don't have to fucking say all that. Maybe, and in some cases, they're trying to find some sort of, maybe not to use the word trauma, but some sort of heavily emotional thing that they can tap into that can activate some different creative part of your brain. And you're just trying to figure out where you fit in, and you're just making art to have that exploration. But it's like the honor that wants to be bestowed upon you, to think you don't deserve it, is separate than like, what if that is the inspiration for others to think that they can earn it?
Right.
Because I would say you're earning all of this stuff. You're busting.
Yeah,
your
I mean,
ass.
listen, like I feel at the same time, I feel very privileged, and I know that where I stand today is not easy to get to, but I've also in the same breath, I've worked my ass off. Like I've worked really hard to get here. But yeah, I understand that. I do understand, just like having someone else say, "Oh wow, it's like
maybe I can do this."
Yes, 100%, 100%. I do understand that, but it's the business is it's stabilizing. Obviously the pandemic has affected me heavily. I'm touch wood. I've had growth every season.
Hit your head.
Exactly. I've had growth every season, but the business is not what it should be, and
if it was 10 times bigger, would it be what it should be?
No, I don't know what that number is, to be really honest. But
so that's
for me, like at the same time, what I would love is I'd love to be able to say like, oh, I could give X amount to the sales of this, to this thing. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I would love to do that, but I can't. Everything is going right back into the business.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, if the business, like touch wood, gets to a place, I definitely want to participate in a bigger way in those types of things, giving back, like going down there and talking to people about it. I don't know what it means. I don't know what exactly I would do, what opportunities could possibly come my way to participate in helping.
I think it's okay that you don't have to have the answer. I don't think you need to say,
but I want to. I have a huge desire and urge to really kind of
that's enough. I think that's an important thing. Is just like not that not doing things, but I think thinking and trying to look at things in your roadmap, it often upsets me of like so many designers are like, well, what's your charitable thing? Well, what's your this and what's your this? And I get that we all are better together. A rising tide does lift all ships. But it's also like, let people process and let people figure these things out. And just the fact that it's becoming something that's more discussed than ever is good. It's still a win. And I think that that's an important thing to champion, than to constantly put someone under a magnifying glass and say, yeah, but you could do better.
Right.
Yep. Well,
100%.
It's great that you did this, and you have all these designers and people that we won't even name because someone would think I'm lying.
Right.
Of how they love your design and love your work. That's good. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
So it's just,
I just, I always want to make sure, like in the work, I'm also respecting all the different things involved with it. I really want to make something that I'm proud of.
Are you?
I think to date, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of what I've done and the work itself. I'm happy to say, like, it doesn't, not everything I make is a tank. I make things that are very precious, but at the same time, they work in a new way, and that to me is exciting. Like I made a work shirt for next spring that Tournier from France, who does very beautiful, amazing, delicate tweeds. They made for me in homage to the aprons my grandmother wore. These aprons that were like,
cool.
That look like piñatas.
Oh my God.
And it's like every kind of, it's like full turbo tweed from Tournier. It's like eyelash tweed, ribbon tweed. It's very, very delicate. Like from far away, it looks like a cheesy pink flannel, but as you get up close, it's this intense work.
And it's an apron.
Well, no, it's a work shirt, but it's in memory. It's in memory of the aprons my grandmother wore. My grandmother lived here in New York, and she wore thrifted men's clothes, and she was very tactile in every part of her life. Like she was an amazing human being. Like she collected bottles to recycle to get money, right? Like me and my brother and my sister, we grew up collecting cans and going to the beverage and getting money for it. But in the same breath, my grandmother was the town loan shark, you know?
Whoa.
And she was such an amazing character. Like she was just like amazing, but she was never a feminine woman. Like she was just like, again, she was so tactile, but she always had these aprons that she would have made in El Salvador. They were always like pink or pastel, and they had ribbons and frills. But at the same time, she had them made with like secret pockets, you know, so she can, you know, have her money or steal something, you know, like seriously, she would steal a beer, you know. She would steal my brother and sister Yoo-hoo, you know?
Oh, God, the greatest trick ever.
You know, it's like, you know, she was like such a intense work of humanity, you know? And the apron is something that always resonated to me because that's how she kept her feminine, you know, self. And so in the spring collection, I wanted to still speak to the effect of my experience into the product and not into the brand. But I wanted to do it. I felt like I pushed myself to do it in a new way. So it wasn't so heavy-handed in a way that had to be these references to trauma, you know, something that was more with joy in mind.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And to me that, you know, to tell that story to me is always like a lot of fun because it's like when anyone saw that shirt, I don't want to say, I don't know if he would be comfortable with me saying his name, but a Hispanic guy I know that I just met came to see my collection in Milan, and he saw the shirt. He's like, yo, this is crazy. And I was like, yo, that's my grandmother's apron. And he's like, I know what that is. He's like, because he's from Guatemala. He's like, I know what that is exactly. You know, he's like, I have chills right now because he's like, every woman in Central America has that apron in the market, you know?
Oh, man.
And he gets it. Like he saw it and he gets it. And I'm like, and you know who made that? He's like, who? I'm like Tournier. He's like, what?
Yeah.
You know, and like to me, that's exciting. You know, like for me to be able to have that person who would know that reference would be like, wow, that's intense.
Yeah. How do you handle that like boost when you're there? Like, are you able to take those things and kind of silo them so you can pull them out when you need them again?
Well, I didn't enjoy that at the moment because it's like a lot. I was going through a lot this summer, just like, you know, because there's the back office of everything you got to run with the business. It's still a business at the end of the day. But, you know, I take this moment telling you about it, and it makes me feel like I did my job, you know, to a certain degree. But it makes me also proud, you know, to be able to tell that story.
Yeah. For people that, you know, want to get that stuff, that may never understand that story or that connection. Like, is that cool with you?
Yeah, no, actually it is. I like even with like
I want to wear that fleece.
Yeah, for me, if you see that fleece, I think if you don't know the story, it's just a beautiful fleece. It's just really like I wore it quite a bit. I wore the sample because it was cold, and I remember being in Florence. We went to Florence for one day to have. I can't remember what the meeting was, but I wanted to go to this restaurant that I love in Florence that I was like, we have to go because they have this curry chicken and it's bananas. But anyway, walking around Florence, not during Pitti, not during anything, you know, it's just normal Florence tourism, basically Times Square.
Yeah.
And I had like 5 people come up to me and say like, wow, where'd you get that jacket? And I was just,
me, motherfucker.
Yeah, and I was with Ernesto, who works with me, and he's like, and he would be like the wingman who would be like, nah, because I'm too like, it kind of like throws me in a place where I just like, huh? You know,
I am.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Oh no, he designed it." Da, 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 da. And I was like, "Luckily, I had him there." But it was nice, you know, to be in the middle, you know, because you know, as much as Italy gets credit, they're not a fashion country like that. You know what I mean? Because it's not like the most passive piece. It's aggressive. You know?
Yeah.
But people like really liked it. That had nothing to do with fashion, and that to me was cool. But they had no idea what the story was. Had no idea. They just liked it for the visual.
Right. I mean, and that's the best. When people try to say, well, what is art and how do I appreciate art? It's like, that's what you just said is it, in the sense that
I never thought about
maybe
that.
If you know everything,
right,
you can get a deeper level of appreciation.
Right.
But you actually don't need to know everything.
Right.
To see it.
Right.
You know, like when you look at, I don't know, Edward Hopper or something like that. You can go and look at it and say, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then if you're like, oh man, the trauma that was experienced, that him as a failing, illustrator that couldn't do it, and then the love and support of his wife who helped run his estate and champion him and encouraged him, and he became this American artist, all
Icon.
These things, right? Yeah, exactly, right?
Right.
So you don't have to, because I think in some cases, some people now are often, even myself, obviously, are intimidated about owning certain things unless you understand 100% of it. Because then it's like, well, I've always wrestled with that with anything that is of means. Like for watches, where it's like, I can't ever buy a Rolex or do this unless I know every single aspect, because I want to back it up when someone is going to tell me that I don't deserve what I have. Yeah,
no, I totally understand that, but I always try to bury the reference so it feels like a reference to the reference to the reference.
Yeah, so it's more rewarding the more you learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
I like what I said, like I put the story into the product and then not into the brand is for that. Now that you're telling me that.
Yeah.
It's not, even like the work itself, like 4S Designs means nothing. Doesn't mean anything. Like the label itself is numbered, just denotes like when it was made.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
I never wanted, and that in itself is very tricky to kind of talk about in that sense too, because it's like, it's still a business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. People who are not like fashion conscious of that kind of tone always question me about it. They're always like, well, why don't you put it on the tag? And I'm like, because I want the product to speak first. Like I want the product to really live on its own. And that itself is like another layer, right? But I don't know. Like I said, sometimes I do feel like I'm shooting myself in the foot, but it's just like my pursuit of or this journey that I have, that I want to see something I've not seen. So it's just like, that's why there's like all this kind of, it's like a layer cake, right? So it's sort of like, it's not so referential to like one particular thing. I get this kind of thing where it's like, I do Chanel for the boys, right? And
can you explain what that is real quick?
Because like I have like kind of, I do these kind of also references on the other side of all of this to the work she did, and like the
Coco Chanel.
Yeah, and the work she did is amazing. Like she was a warrior, I think, to kind of like, she was making things that were so the opposite of her time. Right? For women, right? And then she was doing these things like, like a Chanel jacket, and it's like canvas, like a Savile Row jacket, but at the same time, on the hem of a Chanel jacket is a chain, and she does that so it hangs perfectly. It's like
a metal chain, not a chain stitch. Yeah,
a metal chain. Sorry, a metal chain to make it hang properly the way she wants it to hang.
Yeah.
And this is like an idea from a woman for another woman, and that to me is beautiful. That to me is beautiful. Just the sentiment of that.
Well, and especially the longevity of that, like the silhouettes and stuff created there. Yeah, I mean, it's similar to like Savile Row stuff in the sense that like it's just, it doesn't need to evolve.
100%. And then, but she took all of that from this idea of military, right? Military garment.
Yeah.
And she used like very incredible tweeds, that were for men, right? And I don't know exactly, but to me, it feels like she wanted to make something that people didn't want to get rid of and that would last, and things that were tough, like she was making clothing out of jersey. She was the first one to make clothing out of jersey.
Right.
It was only for underwear back then.
Right.
So to me, like those ideas that are so old, they still are, for me, they're still so modern now. And to me, that work, I don't know if people do that type of work anymore.
Well, clearly you do. But like, I think the thing is,
I don't know.
You can, that's the thing where it's like someone can see the cardigan style jackets that that you've made, which it's cool because it's like, if you know,
right.
And if you don't, you can look at it and be like, man, this is great. The fabric is really cool.
Like
it's heavy. It's the buttons are kind of different and weird, and you get it, and you can just wear it and go on with the rest of your life. Because when we were talking earlier, when you think about brands that are really successful, they sell to people who don't really care about clothes. Like when you think of the biggest brands, like you and I, we love clothes. People that are listening to this, they love clothes. They want to analyze. They want to have a more rewarding experience the longer they own it. But like the brands that just have so much, cash and all these things that can do it are brands that, like, in my head, I will make fun of and joke about and be silly because they're being sold to people who don't care about clothes.
Right.
And, and that's like where that's where the longevity of some of those brands come in. But it's like, but then those brands have to reinvent themselves to get credibility from the people who are the clothing critics and all that stuff. And so it's like,
no, 100%. It's like, yeah, I made a sweater last spring where I put the logo. It's a rib cotton sweater, crepe cotton, and I wanted the logo to be on the rib because usually with a rib you would then have to make a window, right? Like a square of sorts.
Yeah, so it can fit because the rib, the fabric's kind of over, like an accordion style thing. Yeah.
And I told the knitter, I was like, I don't want that. I was like, basically like embroider it on the rib. And he's like, who cares? And I'm just like, it's just like for me, I just don't want a box. And I want to see it's like you don't see it, but I think to have that clean, just right on the rib, it's like you can't put your finger on why you like it or why it's different than the next sweater. And that's part of the work for me. Like you can't put your finger on it. And it's not just in the references, but it's in the construction as well. I want to, and these kind of very simple styles that were made for the military was just for ease, right? And some of it obviously was for ceremony, et cetera, et cetera. But for Coco Chanel to acknowledge that and bring it into her world, to me, I always thought was very cool. And I kind of like the idea of saying or thinking that, maybe like I'm taking it back to the boys.
Yeah.
But I quite enjoy when I see like the girls that work for me too, when they wear it. It's always very cool for me to see that. But to see girls wearing it, but anyone could wear it. It doesn't matter for me. In essence, like for me, it's just I don't want you to put a finger on this. I want you to just like it, and that's it.
Yeah.
So the reference to the reference to the reference ultimately is not important to the end game, but it's important to me because again, I want to see something new and I can't help but be myself. And so I have to be authentic in the product, because I want to stand by it.
Yeah. So you're Radiohead. If Radiohead made clothes, and to match what you were saying, right?
No, yeah, I guess so.
That's
funny,
because
But no, that's pretty funny. I know I wouldn't have come to that realization ever. But yeah, kind of, because they do a really good job in referencing music, but like from the past, but you kind of don't realize it.
Yeah, you're like, is this Brahms? Is this no? Wait,
yeah.
Oh no, it's.
Yeah. It's very I guess so. Because sometimes, like I was saying before, like I'll tell when I ask for something to be made, I get questioned a lot. Well, in the beginning, now I don't get questioned so much. Touch wood. I don't. They believe in me. They have fun with me now. But in the beginning, I had to really talk, and I had to always refer to something that they would know, but it wasn't really the reference to that person or that thing. It was the idea of it. Right. So it'd be very tricky for me to just like copy. Like it just like it doesn't sit well with me to just copy something. So because again, I have to add something more and more and more and more until it's something completely different from the original idea that I was thinking about. But I'm not a designer in the sense of designing from fantasy. I can't make a 3-sleeve sweater. But so I always have to my first starting point is always rooted in real menswear.
Right.
Real authentic menswear. It always starts from there. And then as I drive the car, it goes all over the place, but it always comes from that place. And then the fantasy goes, when I turn the corner. So it'd be very difficult for me to really kind of, I don't know, do something other than that. I can't. It's like I'm not wired that way. I don't know why.
No, I think that's totally fair. And
I don't know how they think, like all these other people, but I think it's also the same thorough line where it's like, I don't know if they can come from a place that comes from nowhere.
Well, and that's the thing, right? With every single person on this planet, no one has the exact identical experience.
No.
Even people that have come here displaced, even people that have come from, St. Louis, Missouri, whatever that is, right? Like it's everyone has that stuff. And I think there's often the question like, how much do you want to examine your past and communicate that to others? Because some people, maybe they had a crazy good life and maybe they are embarrassed or maybe they're overly proud and they just don't want to talk about it. And I mean, I think this is something that happens too when you have kids. I mean, you have a lovely family. Like you kind of see like, oh yeah, I grew up this way. And you find out that maybe someone else is growing up differently. And you just kind of start to unpack that. And I think it's interesting how we are constantly looking at how to improve what we had. It does make me feel more empathetic to any parent, my own and other parents, where you're like, yeah, you know what? But everyone's still, they're trying.
Right. No, I mean, having kids definitely makes you filter everything completely different.
Yeah.
You know?
And I'm sure that works the same way. I mean, some unconsciously, I'm sure that works its way in your designs.
Yeah. For me, I especially like my little girl is she's not wired like me. She's very curious. She's very, very curious. But for she's 8. Right. So how you can't really be so heavy handed with like this idea of the trauma and emotion and things like that. But she is very excited about, her dad makes clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's a cool story.
Yeah, exactly. It's exciting, I guess. I never thought about it that way, but it's exciting. But I also always get back to the starting point when I try to communicate to her that it's not easy. It's not like you just make a sketch and throw it in the air and it's made, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I share with her from time to time steps, and then this is a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the thing is too, especially now, like people, there's some younger designers that I like follow and try to pay attention to. And one of them was like, I'm done designing physical clothes. I'm only designing clothes in the metaverse. And I'm doing this.
God.
And I was just like, uh-oh. And it just was like, this is so over my head. I'm like, sure. Is that okay? Sure. Maybe that's okay. Because in my head, I was initially like, clown.
Well, the thing is about it, like doing this, it's like, it's still a business, right?
Yeah.
It's still a business, it's like, it's what separates it from like really saying it's art, because like in 6 months time, you have to do it again. And to do it again, you had to have sold what you made 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so that cycle, unless you have a ton of capital, it's hard to function. I tell people like, it's like there's points in times in the year where you're paying for 3 seasons all at once.
Oh.
That's, you're to pay for 3 seasons all at once.
Right.
That is not a walk in the park. It hurts.
Yeah.
Your money or someone else's money. It's not so simple, and you don't see the return on that. And if everything is perfect for 6 months, nothing is perfect.
Right. Yeah.
So, for anyone, that thinks it's very simple, it's not. It's very, very hard. I mean, for me, it's just like, this is all I know. So it's like, I also don't want to, I've worked too hard to just throw this out the window. Like, what do I do? Like outside of this, right?
Yeah.
Like,
what would you do if you weren't making clothes?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I always have this like joke that I'm going to just get enough money to like open a laundromat and walk away in the sunset or work at Target just so I have health insurance.
You're going to go full. Yeah. Dude, I've thought about that too. But things have been bad. I was like, okay, Elizabeth, I was like, I can always go work at Starbucks and I can get health insurance.
No, I know. I had this conversation a few weeks ago with somebody in Italy where it's just like, that's a real thing, man. Like you have to think about like, I need health insurance. My family needs health insurance.
Yeah.
That's like more important than like making that much money.
Oh my, yes. I think that is one of the continued things when you think about artistry in other countries and other places where like so many times, like, I was watching British Bake Off, right? That
I've not seen that. I want to see that. I need to see more TV.
and they were like, oh yeah, I work as a nanny in the day, or I work as, like a teacher. And then I also have a business and I like, make Legos and stuff. And you're just like, and they were just so happy and so content. And I was like, yeah, I know why they're so happy, because they're not freaking out every month about health insurance.
100%. Dude.
I was like sitting there so jealous.
1000%.
I was like, I'd love to just dick around with Legos and hang out with kids and just be a dad.
Can you imagine? It would like, America would change totally. Like people would have sanity.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, but it's like, just,
it's wild.
I think that's the hardest part. Cause like, as a creative, if you work for you, I mean, there's no blammo health insurance. What is it? Like, I mean, I'm on the 4S health insurance plan. Like, well, what is that?
Can you imagine?
Yeah. Or what is your 401k matching look like?
My little girl, she started a new school. She's in 3rd grade now. And she's been to the nurse. I guess she always went to the nurse prior to kill time, I think, now that I think about it.
All right.
But she's like, Dad, in 3rd grade now, the nurse, all she does is just give you an ice pack. That's it. Just an ice pack.
That's funny.
That's the 4S health insurance. We'll just give you
we're just going to give you an ice pack.
I'm going to tell her when I get home.
Yeah.
She'll crack up. No, but it's like, it's true, man. It's wild times, man. It's wild times. But that's probably one of the things that maybe is killing the American dream, right?
Well, I mean, yeah. And like, here's the thing. We're not going to solve it. I'm not trying to, but like that is when you think about the anxiety.
Yeah. 100%.
And in most cases, we're in this unique position because up until this point, the lifespan of individuals was growing more and more. The population was growing more and more, which becomes burdensome, for lack of a better term, on the health industry to provide care, elder care. My dad's stuff, dude. I looked it up to find out what would it cost to put my dad in like 24-hour care. It's $4,000 a month. I'm like, I can't afford that. And that's also probably with someone who's not
great
making, and also probably not even making, enough money.
Right.
Right. And so you're just like, son of, like, it's, so there's, I wish I could wave a magic wand and just have us not be worried about that, not be worried about, especially after COVID now, like I still find myself like overly sensitive over things where, I was in the shower and like, you got the hot steam and I'm like, wait, am I sick? And I'm like, oh no, it's just steam. I just inhaled steam. Like chill out.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. No, and the thing is like, it's not really over, right? Because it's like,
no,
we don't know. It's just so many variables that it's just like, it couldn't,
it'll work its way. Hopefully,
I think
endemic.
I think
thing,
it's like, I think it's going to get normalized, right?
Yeah, it's basically been there. We went and got coffee a minute ago, and everyone's high-fiving each other, and everything's fine. So it's interesting.
Yeah, 100%. But
anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no. It's like I like this. It's like just a conversation, really.
Welcome to the show.
But and it's nice because my only other experience is like shouting back at someone else.
Oh yeah.
So this is nice and calm.
Yeah.
No, but it's just like now that it's like normalizing COVID. It's sort of like now I'm normalizing this venture, this business, you know? And so like, like my team can now come to me and it's like, I'm kind of trying to reset and kind of just go back to like
travel
exactly. And try to like get my footing again. And it's been really surreal to think about that, like having conversations on the business end of things too, just like what the next steps are, like talking to a lot of people that I've recently met in this business and talking to friends, like what is like, because the trickiest part for me or the normalization of this now, I was in a positive way, I was able to live in a bubble during the pandemic, but now I have to be out of that bubble. So now what's the next step for me in my business and communicating all this analog work in a digital way, Because like, the bigger business partners I have, like, the stores I sell to rather, right? Porter and Essence and et cetera, et cetera. It's like, how do we take the business now to a way where it's like people are more aware or understand it in a different way? Because like sell-throughs that I have now for like mom and pop stores are great, but it's just like, and all the bigger guys are happy, they're fine. And so, a couple of them are doing really well, but it makes me, start analyzing things like how to present it, right, because like if I was a different person, because of like what I look like and who I am, the business is different. Like if I was like a fabulous other person,
I get what you're saying.
I might be a fashion superstar right now, but like taking what I do now and who I am on the road. Like I have to be a politician, maybe. I don't know. It's a very tricky thing to kind of think about, but it's like I have to really start normalizing that.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, like when we were talking earlier on, when we were recording, that's the thing where it's like I get frustrated now where it's like you can't just say like, here's the product.
Right.
No. It's and even though there's so much work and effort in that product, but now it's like, well, I guess I gotta get emotional and tell you everything. You get it, and you're just like, and so I don't envy you, but I also think it's the best way to explain this. Where when I was playing music and I was trying to be a musician, there was this very successful artist who I viewed as very successful, and he offered me some advice, and I was like, how are you able to make a living like playing music?
Yeah,
and he's like, for me, like music is art. And most artists have to find some compromise to their art to make a living. And the ones that are the happiest are the ones that can compromise enough to make it a decent living. Right. And some people who refuse to compromise realize they're not able to make their art forever because they refuse, Now, look, there's a couple where you have some people and it's like, I'm not compromising anything. And somehow, by the skin of their teeth, who knows? Or what are the privileges that they have outside of that?
Right.
But he was just like, like, I want to make this song and I wanted it to be this, or I want to make a rock opera. I want to do that.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to shorten the song to 3.5 minutes.
Right.
So it works on the radio. So someone does this. So and he's like, so I have to find a way to compromise. And that's something that I always think about, where it's like to make the living off of the art, not to make the art.
Right.
There's some form of minor compromise or major.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's kind of like the next kind of thing I have to tackle. Like, how do I normalize it so it's not just like on this fast forward motion where I'm just making things. Right. And how do you communicate the idea of a brand now that is so, it's so many different angles?
It's deep. It's a very deep and rewarding brand. But
to a bigger kind of audience and scale, that communication is the next challenge I have, and I'm not very good at that. So,
I mean, wish me luck. Fine now.
Wish me luck. But no, I mean, we'll see. Like, it's just like right now, it's like step by step. But I'm looking forward to normalizing it too. Because like I want to work on my back. I don't want back pain anymore.
Yeah, your physical back is what.
Yeah, exactly. Literally.
Yeah.
And I look forward to being a good friend again, because I'm a terrible friend.
I wouldn't say that, but
I'm a terrible friend. But no, I mean, I'm very pleased that now the mills are on my side. People are understanding it on that end more, so that I don't have to, be aggressive and not compromise, and be able to expand on these kind of ideas in a different way, and tell this story in a setting that is more real than during a pandemic.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So that to me is, I'm very excited to look and looking forward to that. Just that experience, right? Like, what is that going to be for me?
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah.
Angelo, thank you. Very, very much for chatting.
No, thank you.
This was great.
This is a lot of fun. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, likewise. I will talk to you soon. Until next time.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. You've been listening to Blamo. We're edited by Marlal, our music by Breakmaster Cylinder, and we're produced by Blamo Media. If you like the show, tell a friend, give us some good vibes. You can follow us on social media at Blamo Podcast, or send us an email at info@blamopod.com. Thanks a lot, everyone. See you soon.